Ever feel like you're just not good enough? Like
Yeah.
constantly striving, but never quite hitting the mark.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, the bigger questions of faith and purpose,
Hmm.
you're not alone.
Right.
Today, we're diving into this whole moral formation thing,
Okay.
trying to be good enough by our own effort, and why it might be doing more harm than good. We're going to be drawing wisdom from Dr. John Coe's insightful teachings. Get ready for some aha moments.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating about this whole moral formation idea is that it's so deeply ingrained in us.
Right?
It's like we're wired to hide our flaws and polish our outsides,
It's true.
all to earn approval.
Okay, so moral formation, it's like that pressure to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
But it's more than just trying to be a good person. It's like we're trying to earn something.
Yes,
Like good standing with, well, whoever or whatever we believe in.
exactly. And it stems from this deeply rooted belief that we're not acceptable as we are.
Right.
And, Coe traces this all the way back to the Garden of Eden.
Oh, wow.
Remember Adam and Eve hiding their shame?
Right.
That instinct to conceal our flaws. It's like it's in our DNA.
Wow, so it goes all the way back. That's kind of heavy.
It is.
But it's so true, and we see it playing out everywhere, even in how we're raised.
Absolutely. Coe talks about being parented into moralism, and I think we can all relate to that in some way. Maybe it was guilt-based, like, don't mess up, you'll disappoint God, or shame-based, like, be a good girl, make us proud.
Yeah.
It all boils down to seeking external validation instead of internal transformation.
So true. It's all about checking those boxes,
Yeah.
meeting those expectations instead of, like you said, looking inward. But how do we even begin to break free from this moral formation trap?
Well, Coe gives us two powerful tests to identify if we're caught in this cycle.
Okay.
First, how do we typically react to guilt? Do we immediately jump into I'll do better mode? Or do we allow ourselves to experience genuine remorse, seeking forgiveness and understanding?
That's a really good question is like, are we trying to fix it ourselves?
Yeah.
Or are we willing to let go and let something bigger guide us?
Exactly. And the second test, when you become aware of your shortcomings, does it lead to this, like, crushing self-rejection? Or does it open the door for honest self-reflection and a deeper conversation with your higher power, or even with yourself, if you're not spiritually inclined?
I've totally been there. I remember spending weeks meticulously planning my prayers,
Oh, wow.
convinced that if I could just find the perfect words, I'd have this incredible spiritual breakthrough.
Yeah.
Looking back, it was more about performance than genuine connection.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking we need to earn God's favor, right?
Mm.
But what's really fascinating about Coe's work is this idea that true spiritual formation isn't about achieving some flawless version of ourselves. It's about recognizing that we are all works in progress, perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Hearing that really takes the pressure off. But
Yeah.
it makes you wonder if we're genuinely trying, why is real change so hard?
Right.
Why do we keep repeating the same mistakes?
That's where Coe's insights get really interesting.
Yeah.
He highlights this profound difference between outward actions and the state of our hearts.
Mm.
It's not just about doing the right things. It's about understanding the why behind our actions.
I love that. It's like that saying, we judge ourselves by our intentions, but others judge us by our actions. But Poe's taking it a step further, saying even our intentions might have hidden depths.
Exactly. He uses the analogy of a fortress.
Okay.
Our hearts, he says, have these layers,
Okay.
hidden beliefs, desires, wounds, that often drive us in ways we don't even realize.
It's like we're these walking fortresses, right?
Right.
But some rooms are locked up.
Yeah.
Even from ourselves.
Yeah.
So how do we even begin to unlock those deeper levels, those hidden motivations that might be driving our actions, maybe even sabotaging our effort to change?
That's where Coe introduces a concept that might sound a little intimidating at first. The dark night of the soul.
Okay. Dark night of the soul. And that definitely sounds a bit ominous.
Right.
You'll have to walk us through that one. What exactly does Coe mean by that?
It's often mistaken for God punishing us
Yeah.
or turning away. But Coe presents it as something entirely different, sort of cosmic growth spurt.
I like the sound of that. A cosmic growth spurt.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, we've all experienced those periods where our faith feels stagnant, right? Like we're going through the motions but not really connecting.
Yeah,
It can be really disheartening.
absolutely. But what if those dry spells, those moments when you feel furthest from your source of faith, are actually prime opportunities for profound transformation? You see, Coe outlines 3 stages of spiritual development, and the dark night, as he calls it, is a critical bridge between them.
Okay, this is getting good. Tell us more about these stages. Where does it all begin?
Coe starts with the beginner stage. Think of it like a baby. What does a baby need?
Food, sleep.
Well, yes, but they crave comfort, nourishment, security. They're drawn to what feels good.
Okay.
Similarly, when we're just starting to explore our spirituality, it's natural to focus on the comfort, the security, the feel-good aspects of our faith.
Sure.
And that's perfectly okay. Everyone starts somewhere.
Right. It's like that honeymoon phase of a new relationship. Everything's exciting and emotionally charged. But we all know relationships evolve. You can't stay in the honeymoon phase forever.
Exactly. As we mature, we begin to crave a deeper connection, something more substantial than just like surface level comfort. That's where the dark night comes in. It's not that your higher power is withdrawing. It's more like those comforting feelings are gently fading, pushing you to rely on something stronger,
Oh, I see.
a faith that isn't shaken by every emotional ebb and flow.
Wow. So it's like we're being weaned off the spiritual milk, so to speak, onto something more substantial, more nourishing in the long run.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this process leads us to what Coe calls the mature stage.
Okay.
This is where we move beyond seeking what our faith can give us and learn to love and appreciate it for what it is, even in the midst of uncertainty or doubt.
Wow.
It's a more mature, unconditional kind of love that doesn't hinge on our circumstances or how we're feeling at any given moment.
It's about falling in love with the process, even the messy parts. It's not just chasing the highs, right?
Precisely. And here's a crucial point that I think a lot of people find reassuring. These stages aren't linear. It's not like you graduate from one to the next and you're done. We might cycle through them multiple times throughout our lives.
Yeah.
One minute you think you've reached a certain level of spiritual maturity, and bam, another dark night hits, urging you to go even deeper.
That actually makes me feel a lot better because it means if you're in a season of spiritual dryness or questioning right now, it's not a sign that you've failed or taken a step backward.
Right.
It might actually be a sign that you're being prepared for a whole new level of growth.
Exactly.
That brings up an important question. How can you navigate these dark nights without completely losing hope or feeling lost in the darkness? Because let's be real, it can be a really disorienting experience.
It can be.
So we're in the middle of this dark night, feeling a bit lost, maybe even tempted to just pull the covers over our heads.
Yeah.
What does Coe suggest we do? Give us those practical tips.
Well, the first tip might seem a little counterintuitive. Don't try to fix the feelings of dryness or distance.
Okay.
Instead of running from the discomfort, get curious about it.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what might these feelings be revealing about my faith? What deeply held beliefs are being challenged right now?
It's like instead of hitting the panic button, we hit the pause button.
Yeah.
We bring a little curiosity to the experience, kind of like, interesting. My faith feels shaky right now. What's that all about?
Precisely. It's about leaning into the discomfort instead of frantically searching for an escape route.
Okay.
And here's another important tip. Resist the urge to earn God's favor through spiritual busy work.
Right.
This isn't the time for spiritual grandstanding. It's a time for surrender, not striving.
It's like we're being stripped bare, right? Like all the ways we try to prove ourselves, spiritually or otherwise, they just fall away. And we're left with this raw, authentic self.
Exactly. Coe describes it as a refining fire, burning away impurities to reveal the gold beneath.
Okay, that's a powerful image, but it also sounds pretty intense. Any practical advice for navigating that refining fire without, getting completely scorched?
Yeah. One of the most important things Coe emphasizes is finding a trusted mentor or friend, someone to walk alongside you during these times, someone who can offer support, encouragement, and maybe a fresh perspective when you're feeling lost. Having that safe space to process your doubts and fears without judgment, that's invaluable.
It makes you realize you don't have to go through this alone. But Coe also makes a distinction between the dark night of the soul and just plain old depression, right?
Absolutely, and that's so important. While those dark nights are a normal part of spiritual growth, it's crucial to recognize when those feelings of emptiness or despair might be signaling something deeper. That requires professional help. Coe encourages seeking guidance from a therapist or counselor if you're struggling to cope.
That's a really good point. It's a good reminder that spiritual growth doesn't mean we have to tough it out on our own.
Right.
It's okay to reach out for help, both from our human support system and from our higher power. Speaking of which, what about spiritual practices during those dark night seasons? If we're not supposed to be checking things off a list, then what's the point of prayer, meditation, or other spiritual rituals?
That's a great question. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, if I could just pray harder, meditate longer, then maybe I wouldn't feel so lost. But Coe's perspective is that it's not about the quantity of our spiritual efforts, but the posture of our hearts as we engage in them. It's not about earning brownie points. It's about training our hearts to be receptive, to stay open, even when we don't feel particularly spiritual.
So it's less about forcing a feeling and more about showing up, even when we don't feel like it.
Exactly. Coe uses the phrase leading with the body. What he means is we don't wait for a bolt of inspiration to strike before we pray or meditate. Sometimes the most powerful act of faith is simply showing up, even when our hearts feel distant.
Because it's in those messy, imperfect moments of just showing up that real transformation can happen.
Absolutely. And it's helpful to remember the why behind those practices.
Yeah.
Are we engaging in them out of obligation or out of a genuine desire to nurture that connection, even when it feels strained? It's about intentionality.
Wow. This deep dive into Dr. Coe's work has been so insightful.
It has.
It's like he's giving us permission to embrace the entire journey,
Yeah.
even the dark and uncertain parts. It's not about achieving some picture-perfect version of spirituality. It's about showing up authentically, even or maybe especially when it's hard.
It's about realizing that those challenging seasons of spiritual dryness, those dark nights, they're not detours on our journey. They're often the path itself.
And sometimes those dark nights lead us to the most incredible sunrises. That's a good place to leave it, don't you think? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of spiritual formation. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.